Jake Morrison felt the transport ship shake as it docked with Kepler Station. He grabbed his gear bag and checked his uniform one last time. 3 years in the Marines had taught him that first impressions mattered. Today, he would meet his first alien soldiers. The airlock hissed open. Jake stepped into a corridor that looked familiar yet wrong. The walls curved in ways that human ships never did. Strange symbols glowed on panels beside doorways. The air smelled different too, like pine trees mixed with something sharp he could not name. Staff Sergeant Morrison. The voice came from behind him. Jake turned and tried not to stare. The creature before him stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its body moved like a big cat, but it walked upright like a human. Golden fur covered most of its frame, with black stripes running down its arms and face. Yellow eyes studied Jake with obvious intelligence. "I am Sergeant Kethtar," the alien said. Its voice rumbled deep in its chest. "Welcome to Kepler Station." Jake snapped to attention and saluted. "Thank you, Sergeant. Happy to be here." Kethtar tilted his head, watching Jake's crisp movement. Then he raised one clawed hand in what Jake guessed was their version of a salute. "Follow me. Commander Rathanel wishes to see you." They walked through corridors filled with more of the cat-like beings. Jake had read about the Zephyrians in his briefing files, but seeing them in person felt different. They moved with fluid grace, never making unnecessary noise. Their eyes tracked everything around them. Natural predators, Jake thought, but civilized ones. The command center buzzed with activity. Zephyrians worked at control stations, their clawed fingers dancing over alien keyboards. Screens showed star charts and ship positions. It looked like any military command post Jake had seen, just bigger and built for different bodies. "Ah, our human observer arrives." Commander Rathnell rose from a central chair. She was smaller than Kethtar, but carried herself with obvious authority. Silver streaked her golden fur, marking her as older and experienced. "I am Commander Rathnell. Welcome to our station." "Thank you, Commander," Jake replied. "I'm honored to be part of this exchange program." "The first of its kind," she said. "Your people and mine have been allies for 2 years now, but we have never shared our military methods. You will observe our training, and we will observe yours. Both sides will learn." She gestured to Kethtar. "Sergeant Kethtar will be your guide. He commands our best training unit. You will watch how we prepare our warriors." "I look forward to it," Jake said. Kethtar led him through more corridors to the living quarters. Jake's room was simple but comfortable. The bed was larger than he needed, built for Zephyrian size. A small desk sat near a window that showed the stars outside. "Rest today," Kethtar said. "Tomorrow you begin observations. Training starts at dawn." Dawn on Kepler Station meant the lights in the corridors grew brighter. Jake dressed quickly and met Kethtar outside his quarters. They walked to what the Zephyrians called the training grounds. The space was huge, like an airplane hangar. Obstacle courses filled one section. Another area had weapons racks lined up in perfect rows. A large open space in the center was marked with white lines for formations. 40 Zephyrian soldiers stood in neat ranks, waiting. They wore dark uniforms that fit their unusual body shapes. Each carried weapons Jake did not recognize, though they looked deadly enough. "Begin warm-up," Kethtar barked. The soldiers moved as one unit. They stretched and flexed in ways that reminded Jake of big cats preparing to hunt. Their movements were smooth and natural, nothing like the rigid exercises humans used. Jake watched from the sidelines, taking notes. The Zephyrians trained differently than humans. They used their natural speed and agility instead of trying to fight against it. Their exercises looked more like a deadly dance than military drill. Then Jake noticed something else. A group of small figures watched from behind a transparent barrier at the far end of the training ground. Young Zephyrians, much smaller than the adults. Cubs, Jake realized. Children. There were 12 of them, ranging in size from barely 3 feet tall to almost 5 feet. They pressed against the barrier, watching every movement the adult soldiers made. Their yellow eyes tracked the formations and weapon handling with intense focus. "The Cubs!" Kethtar said, noticing Jake's attention. The offspring of our stationed warriors. They are too young for training, but they love to watch. They look very interested, Jake observed. Zephyrian young learn by watching first, Kethtar explained. They observe their elders until they are old enough to join proper training. It is our way. Jake studied the cubs more closely. They mimicked some of the soldiers' movements from behind the safety barrier. When a soldier raised his weapon, several cubs pretended to do the same. When the formation shifted left, the cubs shuffled left too. Smart little ones, Jake said. Very smart, Kethtar agreed. Too smart sometimes. They get into places they should not go. The morning training continued for 3 hours. Jake watched the Zephyrians practice combat techniques that use their claws and teeth along with their weapons. They moved like a pack when they fought, covering each other's blind spots naturally. During a break, Jake approached the barrier where the cubs watched. They scattered when they saw him coming, hiding behind support pillars. Only their large eyes peeked out at him. "It is all right," Jake called softly. "I will not hurt you." One cub, braver than the others, crept closer to the barrier. It was about 4 feet tall with lighter fur than the adults. Large ears twitched as it studied Jake. "Hello," Jake said. The cub made a soft chittering sound that might have been their version of hello. Soon, other cubs joined the first one. They pressed against the barrier again, staring at the strange human with obvious curiosity. "They have never seen a human before," Kethtar said, approaching from behind. "You are as alien to them as they are to you." Jake smiled at the cubs. One of them tried to copy his expression, pulling back its lips to show small white teeth. The attempt at a human smile looked fierce on the alien face, but Jake could tell it was meant to be friendly. "They learn fast," he said. "Faster than adults sometimes," Kethtar replied. "Young minds are more flexible." The training session ended with the adult soldiers performing weapon drills. Jake watched them move through complex routines that required perfect timing. Their natural grace made even the difficult movements look easy. As the soldiers filed out of the training ground, the cubs remained at the barrier. They watched Jake pack up his notes and equipment. When he looked back at them, several cubs tried to stand straighter, copying his military posture. Jake had a feeling this assignment would be more interesting than he had expected. Jake had been on Kepler Station for a week when Commander Rathnell called him to her office. He found her studying reports on a large display screen, data scrolled past in symbols he could not read. "Sit, Sergeant Morrison," she said without looking away from the screen. "I have a request." Jake took the offered chair, which was too big for his human frame. "Yes, Commander." "My soldiers are curious about human training methods," she said, finally turning to face him. "They have watched you during our exercises. They see how you stand, how you move. You carry yourself differently than we do." "Different training, different results," Jake replied. "Indeed. I would like you to demonstrate human military techniques for my troops. Show them how humans prepare for war." Jake felt a mix of pride and nervousness. "I would be honored, Commander." "Tomorrow morning, you will have the training ground for 1 hour. Sergeant Kethtar will assist you." The next morning, Jake arrived at the training ground early. He had spent the evening planning what to show the Zephyrians. Human military drill was about precision, discipline, and unit cohesion. Things that might look strange to beings who moved like natural hunters. Kethtar met him at the equipment storage. "What do you need?" "Nothing special," Jake said. "Human drill is about the body and mind working together. No extra equipment required." The Zephyrian soldiers filed into the training ground and formed their usual loose formation. They stood with the relaxed alertness of predators, ready to move in any direction. Very different from human military posture. Jake walked to the center of the space. 40 pairs of yellow eyes watched him. Behind the barrier, he could see the cubs had gathered again. All 12 of them pressed against the transparent wall, eager to see what the human would do. "In human military training," Jake began, his voice carrying clearly through the large space, "we focus on precision and unity. Every soldier moves the same way, at the same time, for the same purpose." He snapped to attention. His spine went straight as a rod, his arms locked to his sides. His chin lifted slightly, eyes focused on a point ahead. The movement was sharp and exact. Several Zephyrians made soft sounds of surprise. Their natural way of standing was fluid and ready to spring into action. Jake's rigid posture looked uncomfortable to them. "This is attention," Jake explained. "From this position, all movement begins." He demonstrated the basic positions. At ease, with feet apart and hands behind his back. Parade rest, similar but more formal. Right face, left face, about face. Each movement was crisp and mechanical. The Zephyrian soldiers tried to copy him. Their bodies were not built for rigid human postures. When they tried to snap to attention, they looked awkward and unbalanced. Their natural grace disappeared. "It feels wrong," one soldier muttered in their clicking language. "It is supposed to feel controlled," Jake said. He had learned enough of their language to understand basic complaints. Human soldiers learn to move past comfort, discipline over instinct. He moved into marching drill. Left foot first, keeping step, arms swinging in rhythm. The sound of his boots on the training ground floor created a steady beat. Step, 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 step. In human armies, we march together. Hundreds of soldiers moving as one unit. The sound tells enemies we are organized, disciplined, ready for battle. The Zephyrians attempted to march. Their natural gait was too smooth, too quiet. They had to work hard to create the heavy, rhythmic sound of human marching. Some stumbled trying to match Jake's pace. Jake moved on to weapon handling. He had brought a practice rifle, similar to the one he used in training back on Earth. He demonstrated inspection arms, present arms, order arms. Each movement was precise and rehearsed. Human weapons drill teaches respect for the weapon and muscle memory for handling. In combat, a soldier must reload, clear jams, and switch targets without thinking about the mechanics. He went through a complex routine of movements. The rifle spun and shifted in his hands with practiced ease. Load, fire, reload, clear, ready. His body moved like a machine built for war. Behind the barrier, the cubs watched with intense focus. Their small bodies swayed slightly as they tried to follow Jake's movements. One cub held a stick like Jake held his rifle, moving it in clumsy imitation of the weapon drill. The demonstration lasted the full hour. Jake showed formation changes, ceremonial movements, and basic combat positions. The Zephyrian soldiers tried their best to copy him, but their bodies and instincts fought against the rigid human style. "Thank you, Sergeant Morrison," Commander Rathnell said as the session ended. She had arrived halfway through to watch the demonstration. "Most educational." "My pleasure, Commander," Jake replied. As the soldiers filed out, Jake noticed the cubs lingering at the barrier. They watched him pack up his equipment with obvious interest. When he looked their way, several tried to stand like he had during attention position. Their small backs went straight and their arms pressed to their sides. The effect was both amusing and touching. The cubs looked like they were trying very hard to be serious soldiers. Their natural feline grace made the rigid posture look even more unnatural than it had on the adults. That evening, Jake was in his quarters reading when his door chimed. He opened it to find Kethtar holding a small tablet device. "You should see this," the Zephyrian said, entering the room. The tablet showed security footage from the training ground. The timestamp indicated it was recorded 2 hours after the morning demonstration. The space was empty, except for the 12 cubs. They had somehow gotten past the barrier into the main training area. Jake watched as they attempted to recreate his demonstration. The smallest cub stood at the front, trying to call out commands in squeaky imitation of Jake's authoritative voice. The other cubs tried to follow along. They snapped to attention with varying degrees of success. Some fell over trying to stand rigid. Others got confused during the facing movements and turned the wrong direction. When they attempted to march, the result was chaos. Cubs bumped into each other, stepped on tails, and lost the rhythm almost immediately. But they kept trying, their small faces serious with concentration. "They have been doing this every afternoon since your demonstration," Kethtar said, a rumbling sound in his voice that Jake had learned was Zephyrian laughter. The security staff finds it quite entertaining. "They are really trying hard," Jake observed. watching one cub struggle to copy his weapon handling routine with a piece of equipment tubing. Zephyrian cubs learn through imitation, Kethtar explained. They see something interesting and must try it themselves. Your demonstration was the most interesting thing they have seen in months. On the screen, the cubs had moved into formation practice. They spread out in rough lines, trying to maintain the spacing Jake had shown. The smallest cub barked commands in its high voice, and the others attempted to follow. They are getting some of it right, Jake noted. More than the adults did, Kethtar admitted. Young minds adapt faster. They do not have years of different training to overcome. Jake watched the cubs practice for several more minutes. Their dedication was impressive, even if their execution was rough. They corrected each other when someone made a mistake and helped the smaller cubs who struggled with the movements. They really want to learn, he said. They want to be like the impressive human soldier they watched, Kethtar replied. You have made quite an impression on our young ones. Jake smiled as he watched the cubs finally manage a few steps of synchronized marching before dissolving into a pile of tangled limbs and chittering laughter. Tomorrow, he decided, he might just happen to take his morning exercise route past the training ground during their practice session. Jake woke before dawn, as he had every day since joining the Marines. Old habits stayed strong even on an alien space station. He pulled on his exercise clothes and headed for the corridor that circled the outer ring of Kepler Station. A good run would help him think. The station was quiet at this hour. Most Zephyrians were nocturnal by nature, but station duty had forced them to adapt to a mixed schedule. Jake liked the peaceful time before the day began. He rounded the corner leading to the training ground section and heard something unexpected. Small voices calling out commands in broken English mixed with Zephyrian clicks and growls. Jake slowed his pace and listened carefully. Attention! Stand up straight! No, like this. Arms down. March, march, march. The sounds came from the training ground. Jake approached quietly and peered through the main entrance. What he saw made him stop and stare. All 12 cubs were inside the training area, spread out in rough formation lines. The largest cub, who Jake remembered from his demonstration, stood in front calling out commands. The others tried to follow along with varying degrees of success. Right face, the leader squeaked. Half the cubs turned right. 3 turned left. 2 spun in complete circles. The smallest cub fell over trying to turn too quickly. But they all tried again when their leader called for left face. Jake watched them practice the marching drill he had demonstrated. Their small legs moved in something like rhythm. The sound of their soft-soled feet on the training ground floor was nothing like the heavy beat of human military boots, but they were clearly trying to match what they had seen. One cub near the back noticed Jake standing in the doorway. It froze and made a sharp warning sound. All the other cubs stopped immediately and turned to look at the entrance. For a moment, nobody moved. The cubs stared at Jake with wide yellow eyes. Their ears flattened against their heads in what Jake had learned was a sign of worry or fear. They clearly expected to be in trouble for sneaking into the training ground. Jake stepped into the room slowly. Good morning, he said quietly. The cubs bunched together like a pack of frightened kittens. The largest one, their unofficial leader, stepped forward slightly. It was trying to protect the others, Jake realized. Brave little thing. It is okay, Jake said, crouching down to seem less threatening. I am not angry. The leader cub chittered something in rapid Zephyrian. Jake caught a few words his translation lessons had covered. Something about practicing and learning and sorry. You were practicing my drill, Jake said. The leader cub nodded quickly. It tried to stand at attention the way Jake had shown, spine straight and arms at its sides. The posture looked uncomfortable on its small frame, but it held the position with obvious effort. Show me what you learned, Jake said. The cubs looked at each other uncertainly. Then, the leader made a decision. It barked a command and the others spread out into formation. They were much better organized than the security footage had suggested. Attention, the leader called out. The cubs snapped to their version of the position. Some wobbled, but they all tried. Jake could see they had been practicing hard. Right face! This time, most of them turned the correct direction. The few who went wrong quickly corrected themselves. Forward march! They moved as a group across the training ground. Their marching was still rough around the edges, but Jake could see the pattern they were trying to create. Left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot. Not bad, Jake said when they stopped. The cubs perked up at his praise. Their ears lifted and several made happy chittering sounds. The leader approached Jake cautiously. "We watch you," it said in carefully pronounced English. "We learn human way." "Why do you want to learn human way?" Jake asked. The cub thought for a moment, searching for words. "You move like pack, but different pack. All same, all together, strong." Jake understood. The cubs saw the unity in human military drill. The way individual soldiers became part of something larger. "Would you like me to teach you properly?" he offered. The reaction was immediate. All 12 cubs bounced with excitement, making sounds like purring mixed with chittering. The leader nodded so hard its ears flopped. "Yes, yes, teach us." Jake looked around the training ground. He had about an hour before the adult soldiers would arrive for morning exercises. "Okay, but we need to start with basics." He positioned himself in front of the cubs. "First, we work on attention. This position is the start of everything else." He demonstrated the proper stance, explaining each part. Feet together, back straight, arms at your sides, eyes forward. The cubs tried to copy him. Jake moved among them, making small corrections. "Your tail should be still, not swishing." "Good. Lift your chin a little higher." "Better." Their bodies were not built for rigid military postures, but they adapted with the flexibility of youth. Within a few minutes, they looked more like proper soldiers at attention. "Now we learn the basic movements," Jake continued. "Right face, left face, about face. Listen carefully and watch my feet." He took them through each turn slowly. The cubs learned quickly, their natural agility helping them master the precise movements. When they made mistakes, they corrected each other with gentle chittering and nudges. The smallest cub, barely 3 feet tall, struggled to keep up with the larger ones. Jake knelt beside it during a water break. "What is your name?" he asked. "Pip," the cub replied in a tiny voice. "Okay, Pip, watch my feet, not the others. You have shorter legs, so you need to move faster to keep the same rhythm. Like this." He demonstrated a modified pace that worked better for Pip's small size. The little cub tried it and managed to stay in formation with the others. They practiced until Jake heard the first sounds of the adult soldiers arriving for their shift. "That is enough for today," he told the cubs. "More tomorrow?" the leader asked hopefully. "If you want to keep learning, yes," Jake said. "But we need rules. Only practice when I am here to supervise. No sneaking into the training ground alone. And if any adult asks, you tell them the truth about what we are doing." The cubs nodded eagerly. They filed out of the training ground just as the first adult soldiers entered. Jake pretended to be finishing his morning run. "Early exercise, Sergeant Morrison?" Kethtar asked, noticing Jake's presence. "Could not sleep," Jake replied. "Thought a workout might help." That afternoon, Jake was walking to the station library when he noticed he was being followed. He turned around to find 6 cubs trailing behind him at a respectful distance. When he stopped, they stopped. When he started walking again, they followed. "Can I help you?" he asked. The cubs approached shyly. One of them, a medium-sized female with particularly fluffy fur, spoke up. "We watch how you walk." "How I walk?" "Like soldier," she explained. "Different from Zephyrian walk. We learn human soldier walk." Jake realized they were studying his military bearing. The way he carried himself, the rhythm of his steps, the straight line of his spine. Details he had never thought about consciously. "It is called military posture," he explained. "Soldiers are trained to look alert and ready at all times." He walked a few steps, exaggerating the key elements. "See how I keep my shoulders back? How I look straight ahead instead of down at the ground? How my steps are even and purposeful." The cubs nodded and tried to copy his stride. They looked adorable trying to march down the corridor with serious expressions on their young faces. Word of Jake's followers spread quickly through the station. Other personnel began to notice the small parade that followed the human soldier around during his off-duty hours. Some found it amusing. Others were curious about what the cubs were learning. Jake began to incorporate informal lessons into his daily routine. When he stopped at the observation deck to look at the stars, he taught the cubs about human navigation methods. During meals, he explained military structure and chain of command. The cubs absorbed everything with eager attention. They asked questions about Earth, about human soldiers, about why humans did things differently from Zephyrians. Jake found their curiosity refreshing after years of working with adults who thought they already knew everything. One evening, as Jake prepared to return to his quarters, the leader cub approached him with careful formality. "Sergeant Jake," it said, "we have name for you in Zephyrian." "Oh, what is it?" The cub made a series of clicks and growls that Jake's translator converted as "pack leader who teaches new ways." "That is quite a mouthful," Jake said with a smile. "We call you Teacher Jake," the cub simplified. "Is good?" "It is very good," Jake replied. "I am honored." As he walked back to his quarters that night, followed by his usual parade of small shadows, Jake reflected on how much his assignment had changed. He had come to observe alien military training. Instead, he had become a teacher to 12 young beings who saw something in human discipline worth learning. Tomorrow, he would start teaching them about leadership. Lieutenant Alex Carter was the first to notice the change. She worked in the station communications center and often saw the cubs during shift changes when their parents picked them up from the daycare area. "Something is different about the young ones," she told Jake over lunch in the human section of the mess hall. "They stand differently, move differently, more organized somehow." Jake took a bite of his meal, trying to look casual. "Different how?" "They wait in formation now instead of running around wildly. Yesterday, I saw them helping the smaller cubs line up for food distribution. Usually, they just push and scramble like normal children." Word was spreading. Over the next few days, Jake heard similar observations from other station personnel. The cubs were more cooperative during group activities. They followed instructions better. They even kept their play areas neater. The first parent to approach Jake directly was a Zephyrian warrior named Veltar. She found him in the exercise facility during his evening workout. "Human," she said, her voice carrying the rumble that indicated uncertainty. "I must speak with you." Jake set down his weights and turned to face her. Veltar was smaller than most Zephyrian soldiers but moved with the controlled power of an experienced fighter. Her golden fur showed scars from combat. "Yes, Warrior Veltar? My cub speaks of you. Constantly. She says you teach her human soldier ways." Veltar's yellow eyes studied Jake carefully. "Is this true?" Jake decided honesty was the best approach. "Yes, the cubs asked me to teach them. I saw no harm in it." "No harm?" Veltar's ears flattened slightly. "You teach my child to move like a human, to think like a human. How is this not harm?" "What has your cub told you about the lessons?" Jake asked. Veltar paused, considering. "She says you teach discipline, responsibility, working together as a unit. She says you teach her to be a better warrior. Those are good things, are they not?" "They are," Veltar admitted reluctantly. "But they are human things, not Zephyrian things." Jake understood her concern. Cultural identity was important to the Zephyrians. They took pride in their natural hunting abilities and pack instincts. "May I show you something?" Jake asked. He led Veltar to the observation deck that overlooked the training ground. Below, the 12 cubs were practicing their afternoon session. Jake had arrived early to set up a modified obstacle course using training equipment. "Watch how they move through the course," Jake instructed. The cubs approached the obstacles as a group. Instead of racing ahead individually, which would be the natural Zephyrian way, they moved together. When one cub struggled with a balance beam, 2 others helped steady it. When the smallest cub could not reach a climbing rope, the larger cubs boosted it up. "They use their pack instincts," Jake explained, "but they channel them through human discipline. The result is stronger cooperation than either species achieves alone." Veltar watched in silence as her cub led a group through a team exercise. The young Zephyrian called out instructions and coordinated the others with natural authority, but the underlying structure was human military organization. She commands well, Veltar admitted. Leadership is leadership, Jake said. Your people have natural pack leaders. Human training just gives them tools to lead more effectively. A week later, Jake was summoned to Commander Rathnell's office. He arrived to find not just the commander, but 6 other adult Zephyrians. All were parents of cubs in his informal training group. Sit, Sergeant Morrison, Commander Rathnell said. We have much to discuss. Jake took his seat, feeling like he was facing a tribunal. The adult Zephyrians studied him with varying expressions of curiosity, concern, and interest. Our children have become your students, said one parent, a large male named Torkon. They speak of little else but human soldier training. At first we were concerned, added another parent, a female called Silara. Our cubs were acting strangely, too rigid, too controlled. But then we observed the results, Commander Rathnell continued. Improved behavior, better cooperation, enhanced problem-solving skills. My cub helps his littermates now instead of competing with them, Torkin said. Yesterday, he organized a cleaning schedule for their play area, voluntarily. Mine stands up to older cubs who pick on smaller ones, Silara added. She says you taught her that leaders protect those who cannot protect themselves. Jake was beginning to understand this was not an interrogation. It was something more like a review. What exactly are you teaching our young? Commander Rathnell asked. Military basics, Jake replied. Drill, formation, discipline, but also leadership principles, responsibility, looking after your unit. Show us, she commanded. That afternoon, the entire group of parents gathered at the training ground. Jake felt more nervous than he had during his original demonstration to the adult soldiers. These were not just observers. They were protective parents watching a strange alien interact with their children. The cubs arrived for their regular session and seemed surprised to find an audience. They looked to Jake uncertainly. Just like always, he told them, show your parents what you have learned. The cubs formed up in their practiced formation. The leader, who Jake had learned was named Zektor, called the group to attention. They snapped into position with precision that impressed even Jake. Today we practice leadership rotation, Jake announced. Each of you will take a turn commanding the others. He started with Pip, the smallest cub. Pip will lead the warm-up exercises. The tiny cub stepped forward nervously. Its voice was small but clear as it called out instructions. The larger cubs followed without complaint, showing respect for Pip's temporary authority. In human military, Jake explained to the watching parents, any soldier may need to take command if leaders are injured or absent. We train everyone to lead. He rotated command through different cubs as the session progressed. Each one approached leadership differently. Some were naturally commanding. Others were more gentle but equally effective. All of them took the responsibility seriously. Zektor, take the group through weapons handling, Jake instructed. The cubs had no real weapons, but they used training rods to practice the movements Jake had taught them. Zektor demonstrated each technique carefully, then watched to make sure the others performed it correctly. Safety first, Zektor told the group, repeating one of Jake's key lessons. A warrior who injures their packmates is not a warrior at all. The parents made approving sounds. Safety and pack loyalty were core Zephyrian values. The session ended with a new exercise Jake had developed. He called it the Honor Circle. The cubs sat in a ring and each one had to say something they appreciated about another cub's performance during training. Pip helped me with the balance exercises when I was scared, said one cub. Velka shared her water when mine spilled, said another. Zektor stood up for me when the older cubs teased me yesterday, added a third. Jake watched the parents' reactions. The exercise was working as he hoped. It reinforced Zephyrian pack bonds while encouraging the kind of mutual support human soldiers relied on. After the cubs dispersed to find their parents, Jake found himself facing a group of thoughtful adults. This is not just human training, Veltar observed. You have adapted it for our young. Good teaching adapts to the students, Jake replied. Your cubs have natural gifts. I just help them organize those gifts. You understand our pack ways, Torkin said. It was clearly a compliment. I am learning them, Jake admitted. Your children are excellent teachers. Commander Rathnell stepped forward. The Cubs call you Pack Leader Jake. This is not a title they use lightly. I am honored by their respect, Jake said. As you should be. In Zephyrian culture, a pack leader is chosen by the pack itself. No one can claim the title. It must be earned through wisdom, strength, and dedication to the pack's welfare. She paused, studying Jake's reaction. My people have voted. The Cubs' parents agree that your training is beneficial. You have permission to continue, with one condition. What condition? You will teach interested adults as well. Some of us wish to understand how human leadership methods can complement our natural abilities. Jake blinked in surprise. You want me to train adults? A cultural exchange works both ways, Commander Rathnell said. You learn from us, we learn from you. The Cubs have shown us there is value in your methods. That evening, Jake sat in his quarters thinking about how much his mission had changed. He had come to observe Zephyrian training methods. Now he was developing a hybrid system that combined human discipline with alien pack instincts. His door chimed. When he opened it, he found all 12 Cubs standing in the corridor. Zektor stepped forward as their spokesman. Pack Leader Jake, the young Zephyrian said formally, we bring you a gift. Pip stepped forward carrying a small object wrapped in soft cloth. Jake unwrapped it carefully and found a carved stone pendant. The design showed a human figure surrounded by 12 smaller Zephyrian forms. We made it together, Pip explained in its tiny voice, to show you are part of our pack now. Jake felt unexpectedly moved. He knelt down to the Cubs' level. Thank you, all of you. This means more than you know. Will you always be our pack leader? Asked Velka. Jake thought about his eventual return to Earth, but decided that was a worry for another day. I will always be honored to be part of your pack. The Cubs chittered happily and surrounded him, and what he had learned was the Zephyrian version of a group hug. As they finally headed back to their quarters, Jake realized that he was no longer teaching alien children. He was training the next generation of a new kind of warrior, one that combined the best of both their worlds. 3 months into his assignment, Jake received notice that his exchange period was coming to an end. Earth Command wanted him back for a new assignment. The news hit him harder than he expected. When do you leave? Zektor asked when Jake told the Cubs during their morning training session. 2 weeks, Jake replied. The Cubs fell silent. Pip's ears drooped, and several others made soft whimpering sounds. Jake had known this day would come, but watching their disappointed faces made it real in a way that hurt. What happens to our training? Asked Velka. Commander Rathanel is arranging for other instructors to continue your education, Jake assured them. Your learning will not stop. But you will not be here, Pip said in its tiny voice. No, Jake admitted. But you do not need me anymore. You have learned well. You can teach each other. That evening, Commander Rathanel called Jake to her office. She was reviewing reports on her display screen, but turned to face him when he entered. I have received authorization for a special demonstration, she said without preamble. A ceremony to mark the end of your assignment and celebrate what has been accomplished. What kind of ceremony? The Cubs will perform a demonstration of their training for the entire station. All personnel, human and Zephyrian, will attend. It will be a formal recognition of the cultural exchange program you have created. Jake felt a mix of pride and anxiety. The Cubs are ready for something like that? They have been practicing for weeks, Commander Rathanel said, with a sound that might have been amusement. Did you think their increased training hours went unnoticed? The truth was, Jake had been so focused on preparing them for his departure that he had not realized they were preparing something special for him. The ceremony was scheduled for his last day on the station. Jake spent the intervening weeks helping the Cubs perfect a routine that showcased everything they had learned. They wanted to demonstrate both human military precision and their natural Zephyrian abilities. We show both ways, Zektor explained during one planning session. Human way and pack way together. They practiced in secret, using a smaller training room when the main area was occupied. Jake offered suggestions but let the Cubs design most of the routine themselves. They had strong ideas about what they wanted to show. The day of the ceremony arrived with unusual activity throughout the station. Personnel from all shifts arranged to attend. The main training ground was set up with seating areas and a formal presentation space. Jake dressed in his best uniform and checked his appearance one final time. This would be his last official act on Kepler Station. He wanted to do it right. The Cubs were waiting for him in a side room, also dressed in their finest. Someone had found formal sashes in human colors for them to wear over their regular clothes. They looked serious and excited at the same time. "Are you ready?" Jake asked them. "Ready, pack leader Jake," they replied in unison. The ceremony began with remarks from Commander Rathnell and Captain Lisa Brooks, the ranking human officer on the station. They spoke about the importance of cultural exchange and the bonds between their peoples. "Today we celebrate an unexpected success," Commander Rathnell said to the assembled audience. "What began as simple curiosity has become a new model for cooperation between our species." Captain Brooks added, "Staff Sergeant Morrison has shown us that teaching transcends species barriers. The Cubs he has trained are ambassadors for both our cultures." Then it was time for the demonstration. The Cubs marched onto the training ground floor in perfect formation. Their small forms moved with the precision Jake had taught them, but they retained the natural grace of their species. Zektor called them to attention. 12 small bodies snapped into position with crisp accuracy. The audience, which had been murmuring quietly, fell completely silent. The routine began with traditional human drill movements. The Cubs performed facing movements, formation changes, and marching patterns with skill that would have impressed human drill instructors. Their timing was perfect, their movements synchronized. But then something new began. Without breaking formation, they started incorporating Zephyrian movement patterns. The rigid human postures flowed into feline stretches and balanced poses. They moved like a hunting pack, but maintained their military structure. The combination was beautiful. Human discipline provided the framework, while Zephyrian nature supplied the grace. The Cubs flowed through complex patterns that were part drill ceremony, part pack hunt, and entirely their own creation. For the finale, they performed a weapons demonstration using training staffs. Each Cub handled their weapon with the safety consciousness Jake had drilled into them, but their natural agility turned the exercise into something like a dance. They ended in a circle formation, with the smallest Cub, Pip, standing in the center. In its tiny but clear voice, Pip recited words they had practiced together. "We are Cubs of two worlds. We carry the pack wisdom of our people and the discipline of our human teachers. We will grow to be bridges between the stars." The audience erupted in applause and approving sounds from both species. Jake felt tears forming in his eyes and did not try to stop them. Commander Rathnell stepped forward as the Cubs returned to attention formation. "These young ones have earned recognition for their dedication and achievement. By the authority of the Zephyrian Defense Force, I hereby grant each Cub the honorary rank of cadet." She placed small rank insignia on each Cub's sash. They stood proudly as they received their awards, trying not to bounce with excitement. Captain Brooks followed with her own announcement. "The Human Space Force also recognizes these cadets for their exceptional service to interspecies relations. You are hereby granted the title of Honorary Junior Ambassadors." The Cubs received small pins bearing both human and Zephyrian symbols. Pip was so small that Captain Brooks had to kneel down to reach its sash. Then, Commander Rathnell turned to Jake. "Staff Sergeant Morrison, your contribution to our alliance extends far beyond your original mission. You have created something new and valuable." She presented him with a ceremonial weapon, a Zephyrian honor blade inscribed with both human and Zephyrian symbols. This blade represents the trust and respect of the Zephyrian people. Captain Brooks stepped forward with her own award. "The Human Space Force recognizes your exceptional service with the Distinguished Cultural Exchange Medal. You have built bridges that will strengthen our alliance for generations." The ceremony concluded with the Cubs performing one final demonstration. They formed an honor guard as Jake walked through their ranks, each one saluting as he passed. Their small faces were serious, but their eyes sparkled with pride and affection. Afterward, there was a reception where Jake spoke with many station personnel. Everyone had stories about how the Cubs' improved behavior had affected the community. The young ones were better students, more helpful, more cooperative with both their own species and with humans. "You have changed them," Veltar told Jake during the reception. "But they have changed you too, yes?" "Yes," Jake admitted. "I came here to observe military training. Instead, I learned about leadership from children." The next morning, Jake prepared to board his transport ship back to Earth. His orders included a new assignment at the Human Military Academy, where he would help develop interspecies training programs based on his work with the Cubs. The Cubs gathered at the docking bay to see him off. They stood in formation one last time, but Jake could see they were struggling to maintain military bearing. Several had tears in their large eyes. "Remember what you have learned," Jake told them, "not just the drill and discipline, but the teamwork and leadership. Use these skills to make both our peoples stronger." "We will not forget," Zector promised. "Will you come back?" Pip asked. "I hope so," Jake said honestly. "But even if I cannot return, you will carry on what we started together." He knelt down, and they surrounded him in a final pack embrace. When they stepped back, they were soldiers again, standing at attention. As Jake walked up the transport ramp, he turned for one last look. The Cubs stood in perfect formation, led by Zector. As the ship began to power up, Zector called out a command. "Present arms." The Cubs raised their hands in crisp salutes, holding the position as the ship lifted off and rotated toward the exit vector. Through the viewport, Jake watched the station shrink away. But his last clear image was of 12 small figures maintaining their salute until distance made them invisible. On the long journey back to Earth, Jake worked on his final report. But more than documenting what he had observed, he found himself planning for the future. The Cubs had shown that cooperation between species was not just possible, but could create something better than either could achieve alone. His report included recommendations for permanent exchange programs, joint training facilities, and integrated command structures. The Cubs had proven that differences in species were not barriers to overcome, but strengths to combine. 6 months later, Jake received word that the program had been approved. Kepler Station would become the first interspecies training academy. Young beings from both civilizations would learn together, building the foundation for a truly unified alliance. And somewhere in the Kepler system, 12 young cadets continued their training, carrying forward the lessons their pack leader Jake had taught them, ready to become the bridge builders of tomorrow.